You heard all of those statistics. You cite a lot of them in your speeches.
Right, I do.
Really bad.
Bad, very bad. For the African-American community, very bad. And honestly, for the community of this country, I mean, we're not doing well. You know that. Our good jobs have been taken away. They've gone to Mexico. They've gone to all over the place, but they haven't come back to us. So we're going to make some very big changes.
But disproportionately, black Americans have suffered the most.
Totally, absolutely. It's not even close. That's why I say, you know, like, I can fix it. We're going to fix it. And I always say, what do you have to lose? Some people like that, and some people don't. But it's like, and people are using that statement all over the place now. What do you have to lose? It's so bad. Some of the inner cities are so bad that it's, look, it's a disgrace, frankly, what's happened.
When you look at these numbers, a 20% jump in the number of African Americans no longer in the workforce, 58% increase black Americans on food stamps. This is only since Obama has been president. Home ownership rate. I go through the entire list. You have made it a point in this campaign to go to, specifically to reach out to black Americans, go to black churches and say, give me a chance. Historically, Republicans haven't done that. Why is this so important?
Well, I think maybe I'm a little different than a lot of the Republicans. I think some of the states we're leading, like I see we're doing great in Maine, we're doing great in Connecticut, we're doing great in places that normally a Republican wouldn't do as well. And some of them, I mean, really, they wouldn't do well at all. They haven't won these states in years. Colorado's been amazing. It's been, like, incredible what's gone on. Wisconsin, we're doing great. So we, you know, we're doing well in places that a lot of people wouldn't do very well.
What are the specific ideas in your economic plan? I know, for example, trade is a big part of it. I know you're going to let multinational corporations bring back trillions of dollars from overseas. You've talked at length about energy independence. How does that help people that are here, people that are in cities like Detroit, cities that are deteriorating?
Well, it's about jobs. Look, our jobs have been stripped. You look at Detroit, where I went with, I tell you what, we had such an amazing time with Bishop Jackson. And here we have, I'll tell you, my pastor, right? What a pastor. Darrell Scott. He is, and he's become a big television star. But he's never going to leave anybody over here. But he's become a big television star.
He co-hosts my show now every night.
Oh, really?
So,
is that right? That's good. But he is a fantastic guy. You have some incredible people. And by the way, they're not allowed really to speak their mind, you know, because if they do, they have the Johnson Amendment to contend with. We're going to terminate that job. These are the people that you want to have speaking for you and freely speaking for you. But we need jobs. We need jobs, desperately need jobs. Now, obviously, we need the schools, we need the education, we need all sorts of things, and especially the inner cities. The inner cities are, I mean, can you say never, but certainly one of the worst stages ever in the history of the inner city. It's so unsafe where you walk down the street and you get shot or your child gets shot. So we're gonna really fix the inner cities. We're going to spend a lot of time. The Democrats have run them for 100 years, mostly uninterrupted. I mean, nobody else. They're just uninterrupted. And you see what's happened.
The high school graduation rate, 9% lower for African Americans than the national average. High school dropout rate, African Americans, is higher than the national average. Inner city schools seem to be suffering the most. You say, let local communities and states handle education.
Well, we're taking away Common Core. Common Core out of Washington is a disaster, right? We're going to knock it out, boom, boom. And, I mean, look at the people. Look at the way, right? Look at the people, the way the mothers and the aunts and the uncles and the fathers, they want to run their schools. And right now you can't. They're being run out of Washington by people that, look, I'm sure some are very good and very caring, but a lot of them are just bureaucrats that want to pick up a check. We want the schools to be run locally.
Let me ask you about what has been going on in Charlotte. You saw what happened last night in North Carolina. The police did say that the individual was armed. They announced this morning. But you have these high-profile cases. It all started with Obama saying the Cambridge police acted stupidly. Trayvon, that could have been me 35 years ago. He'd look like my son. He weighed in on Ferguson and Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and all these high-profile race cases. But I just gave a statistic that I think should shock everybody's conscience and soul. I'm in a church, Pastor. And that is 3,660 people are dead since Obama's been president in his hometown of Chicago.
Yeah.
I bet nobody knows the names of any of those 3,660.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, The violence in the inner city is incredible. In particular, I watched Tulsa, and I know Tulsa. This is the man just happened.
Right.
Hands up. He was doing everything he was supposed to do.
I saw it, yeah.
Everything. And a young policeman shot this man. I don't get it. You can come. I don't care where you're coming from. There was something really bad going on.
Saw it. He had his hands up.
I don't know if she choked. No. He was walking. His hands were high. He was walking to the car. He put the hands on the car. Now, maybe she choked. Something really bad happened. But this is something,
How do we stop this cycle of violence, and more particularly, I mentioned Chicago, 75% of those shootings are black Americans. 3,660 since Obama's president.
Yeah.
This year alone, over 3,000 shot in one city. Now, I would think if it was your home city of New York, you would have gone to New York and tried to do something about it.
I was in New York when it was really
bad.
Numbers never like that. I mean, Chicago is, you take some of these cities, it's worse than, and there's two Chicagos. There's the luxury Chicago where I have this incredible hotel and it's a whole different world. And then you have the other side of the world where it's horrible. Now, I have to say, the crime is just beyond anything. It's worse than Afghanistan. I said worse than some of the war-torn cities, and that's true. But in New York, we had Rudy Giuliani did a fantastic job. He was a great mayor. He really was. And we had horrible numbers. And we had a wonderful police commission working with Rudy. And they started stop and frisk. And they did a great job. And New York became from one of the more unsafe cities to one of the largest, maybe the largest safe city, I think, right? I think it was the largest safe city.
About 2,500 murders
in the world,
down
or something.
to 500.
Yeah, so it was unbelievable, and it was stop and frisk. Now, they've stopped it in New York. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. But Chicago, maybe more than ever, you're going to need something, because what's going on there is absolutely out of control.
Let me ask this question. Hillary Clinton has played the race card against you in this campaign. Yeah. She's talked about, I guess, all of us. If you're supporting Donald Trump, you're a deplorable person, irredeemable. Pastor, I thought everybody was redeemable if you say you're sorry for your sins, right? Okay. Well, and that racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic.
She went through the whole list.
The whole list, and check everything off. Does that aggravate you? Does that annoy you?
Well, you have to know from where it comes. I mean, I understand what's going on, and, it's their only hope. They see what's happening with the polls. You see what's happening with the polls. We have a movement going on, John, and this is white, black, Asian, everybody. We have a movement going, Hispanic, because people are tired of what's going on in the country. We spent trillions of dollars, $6 trillion now in the Middle East, and you come to Cleveland or you go to Detroit or Philadelphia, and we can't build a school. We can't even paint the classrooms. Yeah. We build schools in these places, and they knock them down. We build them again. They knock them down. We do it a third time. Look, it is insane. We're up to $6 trillion in the Middle East, and our roads have potholes. Our highways are in bad shape. Our bridges are falling down. So people are tired.
When she uses all of those names now, she has taken money from countries like the UAE and Kuwait and Oman and Saudi Arabia. So she says you're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, but she takes money from a country that where men tell women how to dress, women can't drive, women are told whether they can go to school or work. Gays and lesbians are killed for being gay and lesbian, and by the way, they persecute Christians and they persecute Jews. Is that hypocrisy?
Well, look, everybody understands what's going on there, and it's a whole pay-for-play deal, and a lot of people have been saying it, and for some reason nobody is picking it up. They're just not picking it up. They don't want to pick it up. They don't like seeing what's happening in the polls. They don't like where we're leading in Florida. We're leading in Ohio. By
the way, the electoral map, according to Reuters, it's 243 to 242. Yeah. That's how close the race is. Coming up, we're just getting started. Donald Trump with us for the entire hour. Coming up next, we'll talk to the Reverend Darrell Scott, Reverend C.L. Bryant, and much more. Also, Don King is in the house. He'll join us straight ahead.
And we refuse to allow those who have selfish political ambitions the selfish political ambitions of selfish politicians or selfish political parties to continue or endeavor to divide us in order to continue to subjugate us. And I believe that the person that God has raised up for such a crucial time in this nation, for this nation, is Mr. Donald Trump.
And welcome back to Hannity, and we are on the road at the Civic Center. We're in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. That, of course, Pastor Scott, Reverend Pastor Scott, talking about Donald Trump earlier today. He joins us along with radio talk show host Reverend C.L. Bryant. Don King is here with us as we continue the 2016 Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. As I promised, I am turning it over to the audience. Sir, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. How you doing, Mr. Trump?
How are you?
Good. My name is Ricardo Sims, and I had a question about, there's been a lot of violence in the black community. I want to know, what would you do to help stop that violence, black on black crime?
Right. Well, one of the things I'd do, Ricardo, is I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to. We did it in New York. It worked incredibly well. And you have to be proactive. And, you really help people sort of change their mind automatically. You understand. You have to have, in my opinion, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on in Chicago. I think stop and frisk. In New York City, it was so incredible the way it worked. Now, we had a very good mayor, but New York City was incredible the way that worked. So I think that would be one step you could do.
I'll just add one thing to Mr. Trump's comments. The murder rate was around 2,500, a very high percentage of African Americans, and it went down below 500 because of the increased police activity in community. So it was lives saved every year because of the concern and the resources. Pastor Scott, you see the violence. I gave the numbers about Chicago. How does this end?
Well, you have to change minds in order to change activity. So if we can, Mr. Trump has talked about stimulating the economy and providing jobs. I talked to Mr. Trump in Trump Tower about this issue, and he told me he believes a major source of crime is unemployment and lack of income. So if he can solve that job problem and we improve our living conditions, it would cause a change in mind, which would cause a change in action.
It starts with education. You have talked, explain, I think this education thing is not talked about enough.
Well, the inner cities are a disaster as far as schools are concerned, education. We build schools all over the Middle East, and yet we don't build schools for our own children. The schools in the inner city, the jobs, and really what Darrell said is 100%. We don't have, our jobs are being stolen from us. They're going to other countries. And the inner cities are absolutely being devastated in terms of jobs. You can speak to some people, 50-year-old men, great people, great men. I don't know if they're as good as Don King, but they're pretty good, right? and these are people that had great jobs, and they don't have their job anymore. And the job is moved to Mexico. Their factories have moved, their manufacturing's moved to Mexico. And we're not going to let that happen anymore, and we can stop it so easily.
So, Pastor Bryant, I was a paper boy at 8, washed dishes by hand at 12, a cook at 13, a busboy at 14, a waiter at 15, a bartender at 17, and then I worked the next 7 years in construction, building houses, laying tile, painting, and hanging paper. 55% of black teenagers cannot get a summer job. If I didn't have those jobs, I would have been hanging out with all my dopey friends and getting in a lot of trouble.
Right. And Sean, in order to tap into the free market and understand capitalism and, of course, make the best of what America has to offer, you need an example. And for too many inner city young people, there's no example of how to make money. That's one of the reasons why I think that Mr. Trump will be a perfect president for this present time to African-American youth, because he can show the way.
What do you think as a pastor, and I'll ask both of you pastors, I'm going to ask Duncan, when they play the race card and they run Klan ads against Donald Trump, I can't think of anything more despicable. If I remember, Pastor, my theology class was right. Thou shalt not bear false witness was one of the Big Ten. What do you think when you see that? What is
Well, I
that?
think that because they can't attack him on policy, they try to make it personal. They appeal to the emotions and the sensitivities of not only the black community, but the foreigners and females. So they'll say, don't vote for Donald Trump, females, and they'll arouse those emotions. He's a misogynist. He suppresses and dominates women. Don't vote for him, blacks or Hispanics, because he's a racist, and don't vote for him, foreigners, because he's a xenophobe. So they attack him and try to make personal, but they don't attack him politically because that's all they have.
But well, that's a good point. And I will say this, because this is important. Those statistics, Don King, you have more diamonds on you than anybody I've ever seen. I think we got to show that cross there to the pastor. That's the biggest one I've ever seen. But Don King, you are an example of an entrepreneur, hardworking, that made money in America, not the statistics that I'm reading. What advice can you give, and what are you asking Donald Trump to do for the black community?
Well, what I'm asking Donald Trump to do is what Donald Trump volunteered to do, is to change the system. It doesn't matter about whatever we say, right, wrong, or indifferent. If the system don't change, it's going to be the same. So they say, well, why would make Donald Trump different from Obama or any other president? Because he will call them out. The same as he did with Lindsey Tucker, what's his name? Lindsey Graham. If you say something to him, he's a fighter. He's gonna fight back. So what the difference is, he would tell on the people who are obstreperous, that are blocking the change for the progressive of human beings. First of all, for blacks, we got to first be included. We can do all this talk about what you're going to do about jobs, what you're going to do about this. If you ain't included in the system, do not include us. You know, a white woman, they don't include you. You know what I mean? So you got the first, and he's the first one that came up with that. He wants to first create a whole new system, take this system apart, and then put people together to work together, each one have a part in it to be able to make it happen, working collectively together. Working together works.
Mr. Trump, this is the Diversity Coalition, and we have a diverse audience here tonight. What does it mean to you to see people of all races and all religions and all backgrounds going to bat for you in this election the way they are?
Well, it means a lot, and Don King is an example. First of all, he's a great entrepreneur. You know, he's the greatest boxing promoter ever, but that's the ultimate entrepreneur. And Don King has been my friend for 25 years. He knows me better than most people know me.
That's correct.
And when he called me, and this wasn't just recently, a long time ago, he endorsed me for president. And I shouldn't tell him this. I think he endorsed Bernie Sanders for vice president.
Yes.
So we can't say that.
But number one, number two, you know
We're
what?
very happy with Mike Pence. I have to be. Where's Mike? He's around here.
Mike's here.
Well, Mike's is advent because Bernie couldn't stand up. He couldn't give up that party loyalty. But he was the number one and number two vote getters.
You were doing great up till now. You really were.
Listen, it was the people that would be the ones. You know, I look at like when we first started in this country, the two highest votes would be president, and the second would be vice president. That would be four parties.
Right.
You know what I mean? The two vote getters would get that.
I think America wants success and results.
Right.
They want results, and that's what he spells. And
They're tired. They're
he's
hurting.
the epitome of it. He's the spirit of America. John Paul Jones, you know, when the captain said, "Do you surrender? Do you surrender?" He said, "I have not yet begun to fight." Commandeered the British ship, you know what I mean, and went on and navigated himself to the promised land.
When we come back, we'll have more questions from our audience right here in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Plus, Amorosa, Larry Elder, Nigel Innes will join Donald Trump on stage. That and more as Hannity continues. Hey, welcome back to Hannity, and joining us now from the Tea Party, Forward Chairman is Nigel Innes, nationally syndicated Salem radio talk shows, Larry Elder, and Senior Advisor for the African American Outreach for the campaign. She goes by one name, Amorosa. All right? Good to see you. And you were great last night, both of you. Thank you. We're going to go back to the audience, as I've been promising. Sir, how are you? Well, thank you for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Staff Sergeant Corbin Stacy. I'm medically retired, or I'm a disabled veteran. With the opiate problem we're having in this country, I watch my friends get addicted. I watch my superiors get pill chased and all that. But my question is, what is your opinion on the criminal justice system pertaining to the drug sentencing for addicts and for those who sell them?
Well, it really starts. It's a huge problem. The drug problem in this country is incredible. It's coming from the southern border, much of it, a real big percentage of it. You know, if you take a place like Ohio and you go to New Hampshire, you go to Pennsylvania, you go to so many of the different places, North Carolina, South Carolina, it's just pouring into our country, all over. I mean, all over. Some states worse than, I mean, New Hampshire has got a problem. It's their number one thing. They don't talk about, that's what they want to solve, is the heroin problem, the problem with drugs. We have to strengthen our borders. We're going to build a wall. Believe me, the wall's going up. We have to strengthen. The drugs are coming in. They're poisoning our country. Not only our youth. You know, we always say youth. Well, the youth is being poisoned, but the whole country. I mean,
it's horrible.
Men, women, 50 years old, 70 years old. I've never seen anything like it. The drugs are pouring across the border. It's like water. And we're going to solve that problem. We have to also help the people that are addicted. We have so many people already addicted. We have to help them.
You know,
it's a great question.
I was down to the border 12 times, all the way from the Rio Grande to San Diego. I was in a helicopter, boats, all-terrain vehicle, horseback, believe it or not. And I went into a drug warehouse, bigger than this room times 10, floor-to-ceiling drugs. Big problem in every community in America now, especially this heroin epidemic. Niger, I know you've talked about it. How do we, if we build the wall, isn't that going to prevent a lot of those drugs from coming in?
It's not only building the wall, which needs to be done, but it's a question of leadership. You and I, Mr. Trump, were in New York in the early 90s, and when Rudy Giuliani came in, he created a revolution in New York that reduced crime, homelessness, and the crisis.
But he was attacked, remember, he was attacked for being a racist because he went into the communities where the crimes were taking place, and lo and behold, people's lives were saved.
Absolutely, and I have no doubt that Mr. Trump is going to do for the United States of America what Rudy did for New York.
Larry, you're the sage from South Central. You and me, Niger, we've been friends a long time.
Right.
Both of you as friends have taken a lot of heat for being black Americans and conservative. Historically, the black vote goes to the Democratic Party. Why?
The Democratic Party has convinced black people that they're victims, that they're perpetual victims, and those guys over there, Tea Party Republicans, black Republicans, Republicans in general, are the villains. And we wear the white hat, they wear the black hat. That's what they've done. The number one problem facing the black community is the absence of fathers in the home. Almost... You know, I've been doing radio for about 25 years, and in 25 years I've asked Reverend Jesse Jackson to come on my show about 50 times. He won't do it. Sharpton about 50 times. He won't do it. I've asked Farrakhan several times. The one black leader who did come on my show was Kwesi Mfume when he was head of the NAACP. My first question was, Mr. Mfume, as between the presence of white racism or the absence of black fathers, which poses the bigger threat to the black community? Without missing a beat, he said the absence of black fathers.
You have emerged as one of Mr. Trump's most ardent supporters. Didn't he fire you?
Yes.
Barely. Once or twice?
3 times. But I'm the only one that did 3 seasons of The Apprentice. And I need to note that he also produced a show for me on TV One, an African-American owned network, and not a lot of people know that. So he actually invested in me as a talent and in my vision.
You know,
and she did a great job.
You don't ever tell this story. Look, I've known you for decades now, and I've been at Trump Towers many, many times. There is nothing but diversity working for you.
Absolutely.
I seen it myself. I witnessed it myself, and then I watched these attacks against you. If it was me, I think I'd be pretty ticked off.
Well, you know, the one thing I see is that when you start to win, and I've watched this not just for me, I've watched it over the years, when you start to win and win and win, and they have nothing to say, and they can't stop you, they always start using the racist word. And it's a very interesting phenomenon, but the word racist comes out, and that means that you're winning, and that's their last chance. And I don't think it's working.
Yeah.
Can I point out?
Yeah.
We have a huge diversity coalition called the National Diversity Coalition, founded by Michael Cohen, Darrell Scott, Bruce Lavelle is here. Can I have those members of the National Diversity Coalition to stand up? Do you mind? Will the members of the National Diversity Coalition please stand up?
Take a shot.
All races, all background, all religion. I mean, you see it. And they've been with us from From the beginning, Sean, from the beginning. And one of the first meetings that we set up in Trump Tower was with 100 African-American ministers. This was last year. No one notes that. No one takes notice that the first thing that we did was to get him in front of faith leaders so that he could have a real dialogue and share his vision for this country.
Isn't it, don't you think, and you said this, I watched your Saturday morning speech in Detroit, and I went on the air the next Monday, and I said, I thought that was the best speech you gave.
It's beautiful.
And you talked about what you said. First of all, I was glad to see you there, predominantly black church. And what you said is the backbone of this country was built in America's churches, and specifically black churches.
It's true. That's true, and that's a fact. And I saw such love in that room. That was an amazing morning for me. That was Bishop Jackson.
Right.
What an amazing guy he is, and his family, his wife, who's really such an important part of the church. The church was, I mean, packed. Just, you know, 1,000.
A typical day in the life of Trump. Everything.
Yeah, no. This church was packed. I guess at least, I mean, well over 1,000 people.
Absolutely.
You were there, and it was really a beautiful thing. And the song and the love and the feeling in that room was incredible. And I got up and made a speech, and you really feel it from the heart. That was an amazing group of people, and I'll tell you what, he's Bishop Jackson. I did an interview with him, and so many people saw that interview. So many people told me about that, but it was a really great morning.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. When we come back, Dr. Benjamin Carson, his wife Candy, they will join us, that and more, as we continue Hannity on the Road with Donald Trump from Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
I am here today to listen to your message, and I hope my presence here will help, and very much help, your voice to reach new audiences. It's going to happen in our country, and these are people, believe me, there are many people out there that desperately need it. Christian faith is not the past, but the present and the future. It is the foundation of progress.
That was Donald Trump speaking to pastors earlier today right here in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Joining us now, along with Donald Trump, is Dr. Benjamin Carson, his wife Candy. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to be back.
You were one of the first Republican candidates, one of the 17. He kind of beat up a lot of people in that primary to support him. And I just talked to you earlier tonight. You're like passionate. You want him to be president.
Yes. Well, he's a very good man. There's a lot of things that people don't know about him. But one of the things that I noticed when I was running, for instance, during the debate when we had the moment when I couldn't hear my name, everybody else walked by, he stood there with me.
I remember that.
And then there was another time. You know, he was chastising the media because they wouldn't ask me any questions. The moderators wouldn't ask. They kept trying to skip over me. He was the only one who said anything. The rest of them were perfectly happy with it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and I was the competition. So it tells you that he does have a lot more integrity than the other people did. But also, you know, I wasn't particularly anxious to run for president, to be honest with you. But I did it because there was so many people clamoring for it. I had thousands, hundreds of thousands of petitions, and I said, I can't turn my back on the American people. But I was secretly hoping that there was somebody who had the same kinds of values and principles who would withstand the terrible corruption that is throughout our system.
Let me ask you this. With your background as a brain surgeon, a real brain surgeon, since Obama's been president, remember he promised you keep your doctor, you keep your plan. On average, the average family will save $2,500 per family per year. Well, since Obama's been president, average family is paying $4,100 more for health care.
Right.
If Mr. Trump came to you and said, Dr. Carson, I want you to help me repeal and replace Obamacare with free market competition or health savings accounts, what would you say?
I would say I and a lot of people that I know and are associated with will be very happy to help do that.
Good to see you, and good to see you as well. And by the way, these guys hosted my radio show one day together as a team. And everyone called in and said, we want them, not you. All right, we'll take a break. Thank you both. When we come back, our last segment, Governor Mike Pence will join us on stage as we continue with Donald Trump from Ohio. And welcome back to Hannity. And joining us now is Donald Trump's running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, as we continue with the Republican presidential nominee. I think Hillary didn't have a rally for 19 days in August. I hear she's off again today, prepping, I guess, for the debate. 5 days from now, you will be debating Hillary Clinton.
I will. That's right.
And you're ready.
Whatever. I'm here.
I'm going to ask this in front of Mike Pence. Don't you think her whole strategy is to get him annoyed and mad?
I don't know what her strategy is.
She certainly can't run on a record.
I can tell you the contrast between Hillary Clinton, who has a career of dishonesty, probably the most dishonest candidate for president in history, and this bold truth teller is going to be dramatic, and I'm very, very confident the American people are going to see that Donald Trump is the right man at the right time to make America great again.
Governor, you heard the numbers that I gave at the beginning of the show. Unemployment numbers, labor participation, home ownership rate, 12 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty, doubling of the debt. The people here tonight and at home, they want to know that their lives are going to change for the better and opportunity is coming back.
Well,
what do you tell them?
Well, I said today at the church gathering where we were before, this is a broad-shouldered leader, but he's also a man that's impatient with failure. He's impatient with failing leadership and failing policies. And I think the American people are learning more and more every day. When he talks about making America great again, that's for every American, regardless of race or creed or color or gender. That's an inclusive message. And that's why it's resonating all over the country.
Donald Trump, last word. You were invited into this church. You have made outreach to the black community, Hispanic community, paramount in your campaign. What is the last word you want to tell them?
Well, I'm just very honored by how well we're doing with the Hispanic community and the African-American community. I want to thank Darrell and all of the people here in Cleveland. It's been incredible. It's been an incredible day. And I think we're really doing a job. You look at the inner cities, you look at what's going on, how they they're not being helped. They're not being helped. And we're going to help them. We're going to fix it. We're going to really make life better for people, and that's so important.
Ronald Reagan asked, are you better off than you were 8 years ago? I'll ask this audience, are you better off than where you were 8 years ago? Answers the question.
Yes,
Mr. Trump, thank you for being with us. Governor Pence, thank you. All right, that's all the time we have left this evening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Darrell Scott. We appreciate it, Reverend. And thanks all of you.